What's up, everybody? Welcome to IndieQuest, the celebration of the indie and obscure, your friendly internet video game and indie game podcast. Well, that sounded nice. My name is Josh, one of your hosts today, and I'm joined by one of my awesome co-hosts, Steve. How you doing?
Doing pretty good, you know? Got a little titch of something kicking around in the back of my throat, but hopefully that just makes me sound 15% more sultry in the final edit. So I think maybe a benefit for the listener, even if not necessarily for me. But, dude, who cares about how I'm doing? What I want to know is, how is Captain Drachma doing?
I'm doing great. I am in the process of preparing to fly out to the old sunny Minneapolis, Minnesota later this week. Hopefully everybody listening to this, or not everyone, but a good chunk of people listening to this on Wednesday when it releases, will be able to be happy about the fact that we will be hanging out as a group later on Thursday, right? So excited about that. Excited to get the gang together and hang out as a group for the first time in a while. Of course, you know, we've done MagFests in the past as a Polykill group, but this is going to be like more of a serious Polykill gathering, which is really fun.
Still waiting for my invite, so hopefully you and I can meet up at some point while you're in the cities. You know, you're pretty close to me, so we'll talk offline.
We'll talk.
We'll make it work.
Oh, well, I wasn't present last episode because we moved. I feel like was a running joke, like Josh moves all the time. But this is actually the place we're hoping to stay for many years, so that shouldn't happen ever again, or at least maybe, I mean, if we're still doing the show in 5+ years, then sure. But this is where we plan to stay for. We're putting roots in, you know, here. Nice. So that's it. Yeah.
And
so
it's still early days, Josh, but how are you liking it so far?
Nice. It's a lot bigger place. All hardwood flooring. We saved a long time, and it was just like, the timing to move was perfect for right now for us. So we did it.
It's awesome.
And here we are.
Awesome. Yeah. How unpacked are you? How much have you left untouched so far?
Actually, I would say we're like 98%. Like, there's a couple, like if you look behind me, there's like a desk right there that would just like catch all stuff or whatever. But like, besides stuff like that, it's all good. So
dang, you're very on the ball. You gotta respect it.
Yeah.
I think that I am infinitely 95% unpacked because I still have 5% of my stuff chilling in the basement, and I moved into this house 7 years ago. So you're ahead of me.
There you go.
I guess you could, on that logic, argue that I'm like 110% unpacked because I bought the house from my folks when they retired, and they left various things here and there in the home, in the crawl space and whatnot. So there's like little remnants and vestiges of their former life still kicking around that I've never gotten rid of. So
that's funny.
Yep.
Well, we're here to talk about indie game stuff. You can tell I take an episode off and my sentences don't form properly. But anyway, we did get another email, which was really awesome to see. Do you want me to read it, or do you guys want to read it?
One of you guys take it.
You go for it, Josh. We read an email last episode, so everybody's itching to hear you read one, I'm sure. Oh, man. Appreciate it. All right. We got one from the Pathfinder Kings, and they say, hello. I started listening to, they didn't say hello so aggressively. I just assigned a tone to that word. Anyway, I started listening to your podcast for my 8-hour drives to visit my long-distance fiance a couple years ago. I recently got back into it and have been listening in reverse order, which is pretty interesting. So I've missed out on like episodes 60s to 80s, but currently working my way backwards through 80s. I see you guys are doing all the Supergiant games, and I want to throw in the Raw Fury games. I know they're a publisher, not a developer, but they publish all indie games, and they're all bangers. My favorite is Atomicrops. It's a chaotic bullet hell twin stick shooter with farming elements, a super bopping soundtrack, and a very stylistic pixel art. It's fun and colorful, and the developers treat their content creators who originally promoted the game very well. One of the achievements for beating the hardest difficulty with the Everything is Faster challenge character is a special red hoodie skin for the character, aka Retro Mations Hoodie, the indie roguelike YouTuber who's debatably the most prolific of the game. When it was in
early access, every update, release, and DLC. I just like supporting developers who include their content creators in their games as little thank yous / Easter eggs, like Moonstone Island's developer did with Shawnee Dew. Wolfstride is another super stylistic black and white, more story-focused game published by Raw Fury. It's about mechs and is sort of a visual novel, sort of mech turn-based game. Also has an amazing soundtrack. Anyway, just wanted to share some games I think deserve some light on them. Thanks.
I want to start with a couple thoughts. Not so much of the content of the email, but little things that I picked up on. First, this person spelled colorful with a U in the middle, I should say, because obviously full has a U in it already. But that makes me wonder where this person is from. Our European friends that are in the Discord never drive 8 hours, so I cannot imagine this person being from Europe. Like, they hate driving more than an hour from everything that I've ever heard. Like, they're so blown away that we drive 3 hours at a time to get across the state, and it's nothing to us. So maybe it's a Canadian person. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But
process of elimination there.
Yes. Yeah. And then other thing, Retromation. I think that I've brought up Retromation in the past, but I get a lot of my roguelite recommendations from Retromation. I like Retromation a lot. So I will just say that this person has very good taste if they are into Retromation.
Yeah, I was just watching a Retromation. It was like a recommended video. It was like Dome Keeper. Have you guys heard of that game? It's like a tower defense roguelike game, and he was playing it. So like I was just watching him not too long ago. So I'm a fan as well.
He is a massive Gungeon fan. So he's got like...
So no bias, no thumb on the scale there at all for you, huh?
He must have like, I don't know, in different forms, probably 500 videos of Enter the Gungeon on his channel. So that's kind of where I learned of him when I was having a little bit of trouble with the game when I first started it. And he's got some like relative guides where like you just watch him play and he points out things and it helps a lot. So, but in terms of Raw Fury games, I need to check out that Atomicrops game because it sounds like it would be up my alley other than maybe the farming element part. That seems kind of strange. I'm not usually into farming sim type games, but if it's like light farming, then, and I imagine it must be with a bullet hell game, then I could be totally into it. But I've probably played more than this, but Cassette Beasts was also published by Raw Fury, and that's a fantastic game, main quest game. So
there you go. I had heard of the publisher before, but I'd never gone and looked at like everything that they've put out. And I think the only game that they've published that I've actually played, at least so far, is Call of the Sea, which is a pretty fun kind of first-person exploration puzzle game. But there's several games on this list that I either have not played or have played just a little bit of that I want to dig deeper into. So they have published a lot of stuff I'm interested in, like Star Renegades, Sable, Narco, stuff like that.
Yeah, and like I said, it's just funny that I mentioned Dome Keeper. That is a Raw Fury game. Cool. So there we go. I haven't played any of the other ones. I know people think Narco is cool. I know that's a really awesome story-based game. People always bring up when they like a visual novel type game. So yeah, definitely a cool publisher. I don't know how often we're going to go into like deep dives for publishers because that one seems like it would take a while because there's like over 15 to 20 or whatever games there. It
could very much be if we are choosing between a different publisher and maybe Raw Fury in the future. I do that sometimes with Devolver. Just because Devolver or Annapurna, we kind of want to bring games from those publishers. So absolutely could add Raw Fury to that list because I have enjoyed what I've played that they published in the past. So
yeah, we'd figure out what it would look like. I would say maybe more likely to do like a themed episode where we all brought a game from the same publisher or something like that over like a full continuous series of.
Yes.
I mean, for Raw Fury, it's whatever 6 times 7 plus 4 is. So you can all do the math. It's like what, 46 or something?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. I was mathing right there. I love it.
There you go. Awesome. But thank you so much for writing, and we appreciate it and taking the time. And we always appreciate recommendations for channels like Retromation, that might share stuff around indie space that we're looking to watch, or games that we're looking to play, and publishers that might have cool stuff.
Awesome. If you want to send us an email, it's indiequestpod@gmail.com. So, Seth, why don't you introduce the topic of the show today? What are we doing besides just bringing indie picks today?
Yeah, so it is another twist on our quote-unquote normal episode. So a few episodes ago, 5-ish plus, I guess, we did an episode on bargain indie games where we kind of put buffers on how far we could go in either direction. We said the games had to at least be a penny and could not be more than $5. It was kind of a fun way to make us check out some games that we might not have checked out before. This time, and I think that this episode type was sort of suggested on that episode by Steve, if I recall, saying we have a whole, the reason we didn't do free games then is because we could easily do at least one episode, if not multiple episodes, on free games by themselves, right? So we can do that in the future. And here we are. We are doing that now.
This is that future.
At least for the first time. Like I said, I've got stuff sitting in my Steam library that are technically free games that I've just been kicking the can on that I could play at any time. I've got multiple games that are free that I've been interested in. And we're not restricted to never bring those games on a normal episode, but we wanted to do challenge ourselves again to do a dedicated free-only game episode of IndieQuest. And I'm excited to see kind of where we can go. And, a lot of times I think that I associate a free game with, something I can download in the Play Store on my phone and piddle-peddle around with until I get bored. But we challenged ourselves to find some free games that were not only good enough to see through, but also worthwhile to put on to the quest log. So I'm excited to see what we all came up with for this episode.
Yeah, and I will add, granted, I don't know what the two of you brought, so maybe this is not the case, but I feel like based on what I brought and what I know about the two of you, when we say we picked free games, it's probably not something that's free to obtain, but then monetized in some other way down the line. I think we're more likely to all have brought things that are just being given out for free, whether it's, maybe a developer's early work, or it's just a hobbyist putting out games on itch, or whatever it might be. We're talking free games, not necessarily free to play games.
Right, not a gotcha type game.
No Hearthstone here, even though it's self-published by Blizzard.
Yeah. Nope.
Or I was going to think like Warframe, but that's that game is a paid game, technically, even though you could start it for free. There's to do anything in there, you got to spend some money. So yeah, we're not going to sit here and pick a game like that.
Yeah, for sure.
With all that, why don't I kick it off here for us, fellas?
Why don't you?
Would you guys mind that? Okay,
cool.
Awesome. So I played a free game for this episode.
Whoa, a bold twist.
Honestly, I was happy when Steve recommended this at the beginning of the year. This game kind of popped up on my radar and gave me a reason to suggest to you guys that we do the free game episode, because I really wanted to play this game. It just so happens to fit a bingo square on Polykill, which I think most of the time they do. At least what I've been bringing. It's starting to get harder. But I played a little game called the WereCleaner. Have you guys heard of the WereCleaner?
Not at all. Is that were as in werewolf?
Yes, like were cleaner, but it's where, right?
Oh, nope. I have definitely never heard of this game. Oh my god, it's adorable.
I haven't heard of it. It is uber cute. Yeah.
I'm glad you guys haven't heard of it, because there are 4,000 I won't spoil anything, but very positive reviews of this game on Steam. This game released this year, so another game I can add to my 2024 list. May 7th. It was developed by Howlin' Hugs and published by USC Games. I tried to do a little bit of research on that publisher just to see if USC Games is affiliated at all with the college, University of Southern California. I couldn't figure it out, although I could see that it could be the case, right? They might have a game development sector of USC. Anybody that can vet that, shoot us an email. Platform, from what I could tell, is only PC. So, what is this game? It is a top-down, what I call reverse stealth cleaning game. Reverse stealth will make more sense as I get into more of the gameplay stuff, but I'm going to quickly go through what this game looks like and sounds like before we get there. So to me, this looks a little bit like Death's Door, that top-down look, Link's Awakening remake, with a mixture of like a short hike character design is kind of what it does for me. Very cute, big-eyed character design with that top-down kind of isometric view of how you're going to actually move through the world. It is a very pleasant-sounding game. Music is very upbeat. I would say funky with some bluesy undertones, although that, for me, one of my favorite songs was on the actual scorecard. You get a scorecard after you complete each level, and there's kind of a funky, bluesy tune that plays during that. Maybe we'll be playing as I'm speaking right now. It is very good, very catchy. Sometimes I just sat there and looked at my score for longer than I need to because I was kind of tapping my toe. Story. You play as Kyle. You are a janitor in this building working for Howlin' Hugs, like the Howlin' Hugs Corporation, which is the developer. They kind of did a spin on that, right? You also, your first night you just go through, and the general gameplay is you have a pressure washer and you go to offices. It's kind of set up in a maze-like fashion where you go through doors and you gotta have to find your way through this structure, and you go into offices and clean stuff up with your pressure washer if there's a mess. But you quickly learn that Kyle also happens to be a werewolf, which is that twist on the story. This would not matter at all. He's a very nice guy from everything you can tell. Except Howlin' Hugs, the corporation, the CEO, demands that everyone must work nights for a week. So it's kind of funny, right? He's all stressed out about it because he changes into a werewolf every single night. So now you are forced to go into this building and do your janitorial duties as a werewolf while everyone else is working in their offices, which, as you can imagine, chaos ensues, right?
Yeah.
There's a security guard at the front that is also very funny named Daryl, and let's just say he starts to become onto you or onto something going on in the office as you progress through the game. That will take us to gameplay, and I've already explained it a little bit. You play as Kyle, as Werewolf Kyle for the majority of the game from day 2 on. You have that pressure washer. What I kind of consider it, like, if you guys, anybody out there, I assume has it at the very least seen Splatoon. Yeah. This is kind of reverse Splatoon, right? So there's stuff spread out all over the floor. You take your pressure washer and you wash it off, right? And then
so it's Super Mario Sunshine.
Super Mario Sunshine, yes, something like that. Or I'm trying to think. There's some Mario Party mini games where you have to do this. You have to go into certain rooms, and the objective is maybe you're going 2-on-2, and you just have to clean the room faster than the other two do, right? That's basically, in a nutshell, everything this game wants you to do. You eventually get a vacuum for like trash that's been spread out, but you also get some other items or weapons, I suppose, that you can use. You get something that shoots paper balls, and the reason you have stuff that shoots paper balls is because you want to shoot that stuff to distract other employees, because, as I said, Kyle is a werewolf, and the anti-stealth comes in with this game in that if Kyle stares too long at a person, he will go over and ravage their body, basically, destroy them, eat them. Well, he actually just kills them at first, leaves them for dead, and then you actually have to walk up to the body and click A and eat the body.
Same thing happens when I stare at Taco Bell too long.
Exactly. It's Steve and Taco
myself.
So then you eat the body, and you have to then clean up the remains of the body as well, on top of everything else that you're already doing, right? So in a nutshell, the reason that hurts is because this is a score chasing game. You want to try to get through these levels as quickly as possible, clean up everything, and then get back to the start before, time runs out, of course, but as quickly as possible to be able to get a high score, because there are, like I said, those scorecards. Every time you accidentally kill someone and then have to eat their body, that adds on to your time. And there's also a special emblem you get on your scorecard if you don't kill anyone. So the objective, it is a score chaser. I mean, there's of course a story, and honestly, I really believe that the story itself is very worth seeing through because of Daryl, the security guard, and kind of how he gets more and more. He puts his tin hat on as the game goes on, and Kyle gets more and more nervous that he's going to get discovered. And it's the funniest part about it is, usually in these types of situations, there's like a bad guy doing this. Kyle is not a bad guy. He doesn't want to have to do this, but he must because he has I should have mentioned this earlier. The premise is that he has rent to do and he can't afford to miss a week's worth of a check, right? So,
we've all been there.
Yes. So he has to report into work, even if it means he accidentally kills people. So that is basically how the gameplay loop is. There are 7 levels. This is a very, very short game. I completed this game with taking notes in 45 minutes. But the meat of it is, if you want to actually get perfect scores on everything, it gets pretty darn challenging. I never failed a level due to time. You have, I think, 5 or 6 minutes to complete each level. And I was usually back within 2 to 3 minutes until the later levels where it took a little bit longer and I was accidentally stumbling onto people and eating them. So the challenge really is to try to max out those scores, and that's where like achievements are also tied to that stuff, right?
Yeah.
So very fun game, and I mentioned before we started recording, to me this is like the perfect, or in a lot of people's minds, a very perfect free game. It I could absolutely imagine I would have easily paid a couple bucks for this game, no doubt. It's very pretty, as you guys mentioned. It plays really well, and the premise is really fun. Do you guys have any questions? I'm already through the entire game, and I'm ready to put it on the quest log.
Are you going to go back and try to do any score chasing or anything after the fact, or do you think you kind of had your time with it?
Yeah, no, I may. I have not. I've saved it until yesterday, basically, and I'm also, as you know, Steve, playing through Dragon Quest, so I have not Dragon Quest 6, but I have not spent a lot of time, a big chunk of time on other games. I've tried to get through my obligations with other games and then go back to focus on that so I can get through it. But yeah, I mean, I could see just jumping back in this 10 minutes before work every once in a while and just trying to plug away at it, get further along. Honestly, some of the extra items that you get, where it's basically like crowd control items where you can shoot stuff out to distract the people, I never got very good at using that stuff. So what I really need to do is go back and actually realize the situations that I need to use that stuff in so I'm not eating people. So there's plenty that I could do to learn. And honestly, I feel like if I wanted to 100% this game, it would probably take me 2 to 3 hours because it's pretty challenging. It's easy to beat, pretty hard to master, I would say.
I have a couple questions. Let's see. First off, is there a way to support the dev? Is there a way to donate to them if you feel like, oh, this should be a $5 game? Can I donate $5 in any way? Or is there any way of? Yeah. I was looking. They had like a plushie that you can buy. Yeah. Maybe that would that would help out. That would be a good way. A little bit.
Usually, so I played Bloody Hell last year, and that was also a free game. And the cool thing about Bloody Hell is you can buy the soundtrack, which is what I did, and that was a good way to support. I will have to go back and look if you can buy the soundtrack. That might be the case. I know for a lot of these games that is the case. Soundtrack is also quite good, so would be worth spending a couple bucks on the soundtrack to support them. But good looking out, Josh. I should have looked that up. I did not.
No big deal.
Look at that.
I do.
So go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I just want to confirm that, yes, I think this is tied to the University of South California. Because
really?
There's a couple games on their website that show up in the publishers list on Steam. And also, fun, like, side note for those looking for free games, if you look up the USC Games publisher on Steam, they have like 50 games, and almost all of them are free. So it must be, maybe like a certain subset of student projects or something that get put up there, which is actually really cool and awesome to see. And there's a huge variety and diversity of the types of games that they're all giving out for free. And a lot of them look pretty awesome. So
I will say, if the WereCleaner was created by students for a student project, oh my God. Those kids are talented, first of all. And second of all, it makes me wonder what I'm doing with my life a little bit, because incredible stuff.
Yeah, you're playing a free game like on Steam that some students made. That's better than anything that I've ever made, right? Type of vibe.
Easily. It's like, come on, man. It's just, some people are just too freaking talented, man. It's just, So, any other questions before I put it on the log?
I think that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. So as I mentioned, you can easily beat this game in less than an hour, and it is a very fun, what I would say is a kind of a score chaser. To me, this is a quintessential side quest. It is super good. If you look at Steam, it has 99% overwhelmingly positive rating for this game out of like 4,000 reviews. So it's very well reviewed by quite a number of people. I think that for it being free, and so it doesn't really matter how much time and gameplay it offers. There's no really value proposition here. It's completely free and was very fun for the time I played with it, and will be very fun when I play it in the future. And honestly, I hope that this dev, these, I assume, students, go on to create more things and flesh it out more, because this almost felt like what would be a great demo to a full-fledged 4 to 5 hour game. Like, that's, you give me 7 levels, makes sense. It's a week, right? It's Kyle's paycheck week.
Yep.
Give me a month and I would be so happy. Steve mentioned it about leap year a couple episodes ago. That made sense to stop where it did. This could easily go on for another couple hours and I would not get tired of it, and just, introduce more stuff that you actually have to go and do, make the puzzles a little bit more challenging. I'm here for it. So support the dev, go and download this game and buy what you can for it, because it is very good.
Heck yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks for bringing it and shedding some light on it. Again, I always feel good, not that it's strictly necessary, but I always feel good when our show is able to highlight stuff that almost no other show is talking about. So that's cool to see.
Make us dig a little deeper for it.
No doubt.
Vibe.
No doubt.
Josh, I'll throw it to you. What do you want? Do you want to save yours for last because it might be the meatiest one, or do you want to get cracking on it now?
I'll go ahead and do mine real quick.
All right.
So, this one's a fun one. This one's interesting. Okay, so you guys know of a little game. Okay, first off, finding a free game that was actually worth like bringing here is like pretty hard, because a lot of free games are like 30 minutes, 15 minutes. It's like, is this having even enough stuff to talk about, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of game jam stuff out there, right? Like proof of concept type stuff.
Right.
Not that a lot of that isn't worth playing, but yeah, I know what you're saying for sure.
I bounced off like a lot of those. Like I was like, all right, I'll try this one out. And then I'm like 25 minutes in, I'm like, I can tell this is like wrapping up. I need something with a little bit of meat on it. So I looked up just the words longer free indie game on Google, started finding things out, and I saw a game that's similar to one of my favorite games of a couple years ago, Vampire Survivors. And the game is called Holocure Save the Fans. So have you guys heard this game or heard of it at all?
I have never heard of it. I'm going to need you to spell the beginning of that so I can look it up. Okay. Holo what?
Yeah, it's HOLO Cure. All one word.
Okay.
I don't think I've heard of this before. I assume this is tied to the like Hololive, like the VTubers.
It is.
Nice. Okay.
So honestly, usually not my like aesthetic, I would say, probably, but I downloaded it. I was like, you know what, I'll try it out. It's a bullet heaven game, like people like to say, or survivor like. It's very similar to Vampire Survivors, where it automatically shoots for you. It's a top down, like just wave based, like there's just a million enemies on screen type of game. It's a free unofficial fan game featuring about 40 HoloLive VTuber talents in it, and it's developed by a guy named KU. And this guy is like, so just to answer the question, can you pay any money for this game? You can't. And the reason why is it's a fan game. It's a labor of love. Okay, he doesn't want to like get into like licensing anything out, for one. And for two, he just says, if you put money in the dollar sign on this, I'm going to lose my passion for it. It's just something he does on the side for fun. And this game is just, there's so much content in this game. I played it for a long time. But anyway, I will say, we'll just start here so we can have some music playing in the background. Mm-hmm. The OST is banging, man. I love it. A composer called Eufrik, E-U-F-R-I-K, Eufrik. I don't know how to pronounce that, but anyway, the music's very chiptune-y, very upbeat, as you can probably tell just from the art style itself. It's like the most neon, like hyper pink and purples and, just all the colors you can think of the rainbow in your face, 24/7, 16-bit style. I actually like the pixel art in this game a lot. I think it's very well done. And I would say it actually has a better art style overall than Vampire Survivors, because I think like that game has cool gameplay, but the art isn't it, But this one actually has some really clean and nice pixel art to it.
Do you know, Josh, I don't know how much research you did on like HoloLive before coming here with this, but I don't know a lot about HoloLive other than, so some background. There's a card company called Weiss Schwarz that makes a lot of like anime cards, right? So they did some sets for HoloLive, and that's basically what I know of it. I don't know, like, is there music associated with HoloLive in some way already? Do you know if they did renditions of that type of stuff, or?
Maybe so, but HoloLive is actually VTubers. There's, they do live streaming on Twitch and YouTube and things like that, and they actually have their own platform too called HoloLive, and they have events on there as well. And the characters in this are the VTuber avatars, so they're all based around like the persona that they put out on the internet. So some of them is like, there's like a girl that eats a lot of like onigiri and like she loves eating and that's her thing, like a mukbang channel or whatever. That character in the game will have onigiri she throws, and like maybe there's a one that's all about like bird girl, she has a bunch of like feathers and flowers around here, so her attacks are going to be feathers and flowers, stuff like that. So yeah, when you jump in, there is 4 main stages to the game, and I was like, wow, this already has a lot of content. So each time you jump into a run, it's kind of like building upon itself. There's a lot of like mechanics that are involved in the game. So you basically start off, you're just a character in the middle of the screen and there's dudes coming at you, and you'll have whatever that character's attack pattern is just automatically attacking, and then you can use the right stick to like aim the attack, so you can like run forward and then aim backwards type of thing. And then you don't have to push any attack buttons. You're just basically playing this with 2 sticks. That's it. And then as you kill the enemies, they drop food, XP magnets that will suck the XP to you, holo coins, which I will talk a little bit about in a minute, but it's basically the upgrade system, and then anvils, which you can upgrade your weapons with. And usually start off with like a character-based weapon, and then there's 16 base weapons that can add on to that, up to 6 weapons. So you can have, let's just say, the feather girl. She has feathers all around her as her main attack. Then you can add like axes that swirl around you, and like a laser beam that shoots horizontally, and these things can be leveled up to 7 times, and then they become an awakened version of that weapon. And then the base weapons together can even be combined into a collab version of the weapon and get even more powerful. So think about it this way, like you're starting off, you're seeing like 4 or 5, 10 enemies coming at you. By the time you're hitting like level 50, during this run, there's thousands screen filling enemies of different sizes and shapes that you have to like just survive. That's why they call this like a survivor like, or I think bullet heaven is probably the best term for it, because you're creating the bullets instead of you're in the hell of somebody else's bullets, So, but any questions so far?
I've got a couple, but I don't know if you're planning on talking about this stuff later. But I guess I'll just ask this first part now. How does it compare? Maybe this will spoil something. If it does, we can go by it. But I want to know how it compares to Vampire Survivors, because a lot of what I see scrolling through these images is like Holocure is better than Vampire Survivors, and you should play this if you that type of thing. So I just wonder how it compares, because you played both of them, obviously.
Yeah. I will say that might have been like the button up of this topic, but I will say,
yeah, I know, I figured.
I think this game is better than Vampire Survivors.
Wow.
And it's cheaper, it's free.
Yes.
So I think this, I was very surprised. So the reason why I say that, I just feel like the way the game level ramps up its difficulty is really fun. Like, you'll start off and you can beat the first stage pretty easily, probably within the first couple runs. Even if you're not familiar with the genre, I handed the controller to my partner and they played some and they were still doing pretty good. And then as you get to like the next stages, it gets a little harder and a little harder. And then you unlock night versions of the 4 stages. So it ends up being 8 stages in the game that are hard versions of those stages. So it's like, as you progress and use those hollow coins I talked about to upgrade in between runs, you get more powerful and it gets a little bit harder, but it gets a lot more fun because like you have to actually like really focus and pay attention. It's kind of like one of those games where you just can't look away. You're going to die or you're going to ruin the run. Right. So I do want to mention this game has so much stuff in it. They have in the lobby area something called what is it called? Let's see. Hollow House. I have it written down here. And this is a farming simulator game inside of this game. So it's very light, but you can go fishing in there and, catch fish. There's like a little plot of land that you can plant like seeds for like wheat and tomatoes and things like that. And you can even hire some of these like creatures to like go out and like collect coins for you. And then you have to like feed them food that you're harvesting. Then you can also like cook dishes like sushi and like tempura and stuff with the fish and the stuff that you're growing to have little buffs to your character. So like this is like a little side thing you can do just in the menu, and it actually affects like things going forward. And there's even like a little house that you can like, if you have just like so much money, you can go buy stuff for this house and like decorate your house if you want to. Like it's just there just because.
So 2 things for listeners that have a keen ear that also listen to Polykill. There is fishing in Holocure, a free game that has fishing. So
there you go.
Check off that bingo square. But also, does that farming section add any benefit to the actual game? Do you get stuff that you can then use in the actual game? Yes.
Yeah. It's I would say it's pretty light. You can kind of ignore it if you want to, but there's like a sushi section there that like if you make sushi, that's the example I give because it's like kind of a basic one, or the tempura, like it just gives you like little buffs to the beginning of your run. Cool. So like if you do sushi, I think it's 10% to your critical. It's like not that big of a deal, but starting out a run fresh, you're going to want as much as you can to get started. So if you start getting overwhelmed, at least there's some buffs there. So that's cool. The main thing I would think is cool, and they do this in Vampire Survivors and mostly every one of these in the genre I've played, is there is a menu where you can do like every time you level up, you get 1% more damage, or every time you level up, you get 2%. And then like you can like use those coins to just have stats that apply across runs, basically. So, yeah. And a lot of the stages will actually have recommendations like you want to have the 6% or the 6th level up for hitting and power and movement to actually do anything in this level. You know what I mean? This is what the recommended levels are. So, so basically it's not an infinite run. So when you go into a stage, you will have sub enemies sub-boss enemies, and then a main boss at the end of each stage if you play the stage mode. And they usually go between 25 to 30 minutes, depending on how much you're leveling up and how fast you have like your XP increase. Because like the more you level up, the faster you're getting powerful, and then the more enemies they send at you. So it's kind of hard to like nail down an actual run time for a run, but let's just say about 30 minutes. So by the time you get to the end, there's a boss with a unique moveset that you have to survive and kill, and then you'll conquer that level and unlock the next level. So it's pretty much the main progression of the game to try to get through the basic, tier of it and the hard mode of each stage.
So you kind of mentioned difficulty a little bit. How long does it take you to actually get to the point where you're saying, okay, I beat this game?
I will honestly say I'm a little over 12 hours in, and I will say I'm not fully beat the game. I'm on like the last stage on the hard mode, and so I'm thinking it's going to take I'm going to keep playing it. I think it's going to take up to like 16 or 18 hours probably to get through everything in this game. It's like I said, it's honestly, you could tell that they're just like, this is a fan game. They started from very basic stuff, and there's a lot of just silly stuff in there that they're just throwing in just because they can, because it's like, this is just a passion project. And every time I jump in here, it's like, this game plays good. It's beautiful. The music's awesome. And like, it's just a really fun game to play. And it's a really fun game to watch too. Like, I was surprised, like watching Sarah, my partner, sitting there playing this. I'm like, just like locked in just as much, just not even playing the game. Nice. So, very addictive game. It's like, you don't want to put it down type of vibe. So
I'd imagine it's full of references and Easter eggs and things to all these different VTubers that none of us would catch, but someone who's like in the fan base is all about, right? It has very much that energy. Fan games just have a fun energy to them. You can tell. I don't even really know Hololive, but just looking at the screenshots, it reminds me a lot of like I Want to Be the Guy fan games, like I Want to Be the Boss and stuff. You can just tell that they're kind of like no rules, having fun, joking around, like no idea thrown out, all playful ideas tossed in. I like the energy of it.
Yeah, so like just an example, it's like it's not the earliest unlock, but like by the second or third stage, you'll have this item. So it's not the biggest spoiler or anything, but there's an item that's literally a giant sausage that you smack your enemies with. Like it's literally like, and then if you get upgraded enough, it's like a screen filling giant sausage. Like you could smack people with. So like it has the goofy stuff in it. I think the main fun of the game is, I didn't even mention this other part of the game. The way you unlock characters is a gacha machine. There is like different sections of the Hololive, and then I think each has like, there's a gamer's like version 1 Hololive there, and there's like 4, maybe 3 characters in each. So you go there and you just kind of go through the gacha machine and try to get the characters from that section. So, that is a lot of the fun of the game, is like, all right, I got the gacha, I got a new character, let's go see what this character does. Oh, this character is a Phoenix character that does like you have an ultimate attack on each character as well, which I didn't mention, but if you hit the trigger, there's like a bar that fills up as you're killing enemies, and there's like a big ultimate attack that can kind of get you out of a pickle, if you're stuck in a corner or something like that. So like the Phoenix, a giant Phoenix bird comes out and a flame of fire comes out when you hit the trigger. It's like, awesome. I didn't know that character was even in the game. So it starts to be like a whole, I'm going to do this run with this brand new character I unlocked just to see if it even does anything. And then those characters can be leveled up if you get them in the gacha multiple times. So say I get the Phoenix guy 4 or 5 times, and the stats across the board will be more. So, yeah, it's just a game of what can I do to get better and get better and get better and get better and get better, and it just scratches that itch, continuously.
I love a roguelite that does meta progression the way you're saying, where each run is something, but then you're getting the little things that you can then add into either the gacha machine or the farming sim, and you're improving incrementally each time, but you can actually see your improvements, right? Rather than, I mean, Hades is a really good example of like the mirror and how it works, but there's a lot of other games that don't get that right, don't get that meta progression. So you just either you are way stronger on the next run because it gave you so much stuff, or it just takes way too long to get those little bit stronger in each run. So it seems like this one has a good balance and actually has things you can see, like you feel like you're getting stronger, which is cool.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like and then there's another layer that gets added on later called stamps to your weapons, which you can put 3 stamps on your main weapon. So these stamps will be just randomly drop when you're playing. And then like some of them are silly stuff like make your weapon sound like a trumpet for no reason, just because they can, stuff like that. And then one's like a rainbow, makes it look like a rainbow. But there's actual like stat increases like 10% chance to freeze enemies. That's going to be huge. And then if you get different stamps, you can actually like level that stamp up 5 times. If you get stamps you don't want to use, you can just level that stamp up, get 50% to freeze enemies. So you're doing screen filling things and freezing half the enemies, So it's just, it's just one of those, like, it's a slot machine you can't look away from, really. Like, honestly, it's like, it just gets your lizard brain going like crazy when you're playing this. Yeah. So all right.
I'm happy to hear that it's good because I feel like I see so many Vampire Survivor clones. Like every time I peruse Steam, there's another one and another one, because I guess it's a fairly basic premise that now everyone is trying to do. But I'm glad to hear that there's this game out there that's not only free, but also is doing a lot of stuff that's different than what Vampire Survivors did. Like, if you're going to make a clone, make it so that you're going off in a different direction. You're taking it somewhere else, which I appreciate.
Yeah, there's a lot of things analogous to that game for sure. I will say, if you guys, anybody who's listening to this is curious about the genre and is like, even $5 is too steep for you. Like, I don't know if I even want to spend $5 on this game. I don't know if I'm going to like it. Download this and play a couple of runs just to see, find a character that looks interesting to you and then jump in and for 30 minutes to an hour. And if you don't like it, you don't like it. But at least, you had that opportunity to try the genre out. But if you do like it, there's just so much content in this. Like, it just keeps feeding you content constantly. It's like I feel like I cannot find the end to this game. In my head, I'm like, okay, I know where it is, but it's going to take some time to get there. So this is going to be one I probably play like in the, I have 30 minutes. I'm going to jump in, do a run type of game. So I love that type of thing.
I think that this is the type of game that we all hoped someone would find for the free games. This is a very cool free game.
Well, I think I said almost anything I can say. You can't even donate to the dev. Like, I want to give this guy money. Like, I want to give him $20. Like, dude, this game is awesome, but I can't. He's like, nope, I'm good. He just loves doing it, So it's just one of those things. That's why I asked you, because I'm like, I was Googling everywhere. I'm like, does he have a Patreon? Does he have a coffee account? Anything. Like, I want to give him some money because this game, like, entertained me and my partner for like multiple evenings, you know what I mean, for free. So it's such a good time.
Awesome.
So any questions or comments before I put it on the quest log today?
No,
I'm ready to hear it.
Okay, I think that the way you can usually tell for me, I think, when it's going to be a main quest, because I just start diving into how much I love it. But yeah, this is a main quest game, like a free main quest game with tons of content. About a subject matter I honestly could care less about. I don't care about Hololive, but they drew me in with the gameplay, So definitely put it on your list if you're interested in the genre and you're not sure about it, even just to give it a try. It's called Holocure Save the Fans, and it's a main quest.
I imagine for people out there who appreciate and or love Vampire Survivors, but also are fans of Hololive, they probably have braingasms about this. Like the fact that you went into this not understanding the subject matter at all and still put it on the main quest means that Hololive people must absolutely love it. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
30,000 overwhelmingly positive reviews at 99% would suggest that yes,
that is true.
The fans are enjoying.
Yeah, it's honestly, this is probably one of the more popular free games out there. The more I looked into it, I had never heard of it. Hopefully most people haven't that's listening here and they give it a shot. That's all I ask, because I think it's worth your time.
No, that's awesome. Really, really good recommendation.
Yes.
Well, I get to win the Indiest Indie Award because the game I'm bringing only has 675 reviews. So, right? Much less than the very, very popular games that you guys brought. Although I don't get any indie credit at all. I don't get to stick my nose up in the air because I didn't even find this game. All right, I didn't do any legwork for this episode at all. Sometimes my generous co-hosts, they just hand me an episode on a silver platter. They say, "Hey, man, do your thing," and I say, "Thank you." Normally, I'm not so good about taking people up on their recommendations, but here I am following through. So I brought Test, which is a game that our buddy Captain Drachma saw, and he's like, "Man, you have a moral obligation to play this game. It is built for you."
I have to ask you, Josh, have you had this game recommended to you in Steam? Test.
Is it the same studio as Space for the Unbound or something?
Yes.
I think that's what it is, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
Okay, cool.
And it kept getting recommended to me because of A Space for the Unbound, I assume. And I'm like, please stop, Steve. Just play this game because it is so a Steve game. Like I could play it and I'd probably enjoy it, but it's just very Steve coded from what I've seen.
Very much so. So Test is, of course, free. It's a point-and-click adventure game with puzzles heavily in the spirit, I would say, of an ARG or an alternate reality game. It's very sort of outside-the-box thinking type of puzzles. And I think it'll become clear and also a little unclear as I talk about the game because this game's a couple hours long. I don't want to spoil. I can give 2-3 examples of puzzles, but there's only probably a single-digit number of substantive puzzles in the game. I'm not going to really want to spoil them for people.
Right.
So instead, let me just kind of set you up at the premise of this game. You wake up. You are what seems to be some sort of like office worker, developer, sort of, generic cubicle type of guy. Wakes up in an apartment that is like kind of disheveled and, stuff is all over the floor, papers on the bed. He's sleeping in the middle of the room. You don't really know what's going on. He's in his work clothes and you're woken up because your phone rings and it is your boss, your director. And they say, bring me the reports. You need to present them at noon today. And it is 11:45 as of the time of taking this call. So you need to leave your apartment and go to the office. You find yourself locked into the apartment, so you have to solve a small puzzle to get out of your own apartment. And the clock starts ticking, all right? It is 11:45. You have until noon. This is real time. Like, time is ticking down as it does in our world, in the world that we record IndieQuest in. Wow, shared space. And that's relevant because you get out of your apartment, you have to take a train. It's a 5-minute train to the office. You literally sit there for 5 minutes on the train as time ticks by. Now, there is a little fast forward icon in the upper corner, so if you don't want to sit there all 5 minutes. But if you do, you can. And it's not like you're getting story. It's just you on the train sitting there quietly as the sound of the rails and trees zooming by, and that's it. You show up in the office, you go through the lobby, go up the elevator, up to the kind of the floor that these directors in your office are on. You go to your desk and you go to grab the papers. Only one of the 3 reports that you need is sitting there on the table. And you're like, oh, well, I don't really have time to get the other ones. I don't know where they are. Oh, well, I'll just go present these papers to my bosses anyways, or the ones that I have at least. You go, you present, you're like, here's, what the findings of the report are. The reports are kind of talking about this sort of test, as you may be able to imply from the name. Mm-hmm. The directors are like, okay, all right, well, that is, those are interesting results. We appreciate that. And they're like, well, you didn't bring us the first report about these other tests, and you don't have any conclusive findings in the third report, so you've disappointed us. And they pull a gun out and shoot you, and your character dies.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay.
And then time loops back and you wake up again to your phone buzzing. It is now 11:45. So this is very much a time loop game. And your kind of entire goal is you need to have all 3 of these reports to present to your bosses in order to basically not get shot and killed and the loop restarts. So it's very Outer Wilds in that regard. It is the type of game where progression is gated by your understanding of the world that you're in, and progression is someone who understands this game could successfully beat it in the first loop. Someone that has beaten the game before could go back and beat it. I imagine every time. Maybe the game forces you to not be able to do it for one weird reason, but the idea being that it's all down to what you know and you understand. which is interesting because this is not a particularly large environment that you're exploring. I mean, most floors of the office building you go to are gated off. So really you have your apartment, your train ride, the lobby, and a couple other rooms in the office complex, and that is it. And the game does not direct you. It doesn't say like, he doesn't wake up and say like, whoa, I'm in a time loop. Maybe today I should go try doing this. All you have is just the results of sort of your exploration and your curiosity, big decisions and small ones. What happens if I don't go to the office that day? What happens when my director calls if I just reject the call?
You can do that. You can just stay home.
Yeah. You interact with the phone, so you can just stay home. It's, your phone dies right after you take the call. What happens if I spend time charging my phone? All sorts of things like that. And as you discover different things, you'll find different threads to pull, different creative things that kind of get your brain turning, and you'll start kind of discovering for yourself where the puzzles are and what you need to be doing to ultimately find these 3 reports. And importantly, you need to put all that together in the end, right? Like you need to have all 3 reports at the time you go to present your case. You can't just be like, well, I know how to get the other 2 reports. It's like, no, there's more to it than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty clean and easy to navigate around in the world because 1, very kind of like clean art style in terms of its pixel art, and 2, anything that is like interactable mostly shows up in pink, and everything else in the world is usually kind of more of a bluish hue. Yep. So it's like, it's pretty clear, although stick a pin in that because there's one thing later that threw me off, and we'll talk about it. But that's the general premise of this. Questions on like the general game flow at all?
Honestly, the reason that I kept going back to this game is because I don't know how much you looked at it, Steve, but the way they present this game on Steam is very, very interesting. I think there's like some home video, like this new, like a weird TV station thing. And the game just looks, I mean, it's not unlike a game that you've ever played before. Certainly, it's almost like A Space Beyond Unbound mixed with To the Moon in a way. That's kind of what it looks like. Mm-hmm. But it is still a very graphically appealing game, especially to people like us that enjoy a 16-bit like RPG or something. So it's certainly, regardless of the premise, it draws you in. It presents itself well, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then it's a team that is either the Space for the Unbound team plus like Outer Wilds time loop. I'm like, I added it to my library as soon as I found that out. So I'm like, all right, definitely one to check out. It's going to scratch an itch for me as well. So yeah.
And it came out this year, which is always a good thing. The beginning.
It did, right? Like it is a very fresh one. So that's generally how the game operates. Everyone will kind of probably play through it a little bit differently. You don't necessarily have to do everything in the same order, although there is sort of some A to B to C to it all. And normally I'm pretty cagey about spoilers and stuff, but I think when the developers put in the description of the game on Steam that you are solving cryptic puzzles with alternate reality game elements, they're sort of putting it on the tin, so I won't be that cagey about saying this is the type of game where you'll be solving puzzles both in and outside of the application. There is an interplay between the real world and doing some digging in various ways and the game itself. The game will point you outside of itself, and then that will point you back into the game. Like anyone that, followed I Love Bees back in the day when Halo 2 was coming out, or these days a lot of games have ARGs tied to them that sort of like announce release dates or teaser trailers or things like that. This game is like, I think of it almost as built as like a starter pack for someone who wants to get into ARGs. Because modern ARGs, I don't really participate in them, but I do follow them a lot because I find them fascinating. Mm-hmm. They are designed with the type of puzzle that sort of necessitates community thinking, community involvement in order to solve. We're at the point where like alternate reality games will release like they'll point you to like a website that has like just TV static, and you need to analyze the sound of that TV static in like a spectrogram to see weird waveforms that create a picture of a QR code. That's like something that no reasonable person could accomplish on their own, and sometimes requires actual specialized knowledge of how to like peel apart file types and formats and stuff. Or on the flip side of that, it'll be like, oh, you know, we figured out that there are certain, well, this doesn't really happen anymore, but this happened with I Love Bees, so it's what I always think of. You know, certain payphones are going to get called in certain cities at certain times, and we need people boots on the ground at those payphones at that time. We need multiple people coordinated to solve it. So this is that kind of puzzle solving, but you can do it all yourself, and you can do it all within 2 hours. So it's a really good sort of like introduction to that type of thinking to see if it's the type of thing that you like. I think folks that have listened to, 91 episodes of this show at this point,
right,
and know my tastes pretty well, know that I kind of eat this stuff up like I num 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 like a little piggy. I love this type of game. I love a game that has either a twist or kind of has some self-awareness to it, stuff like that. It's very fun. So if you're into that type of game, you'll like it.
Question. As I've gotten recommended this game so many times in Steam, I've obviously looked at the Steam page several times, and of course I have wandering eyes and start going down towards the reviews.
Yeah.
You've now mentioned the ARG elements. I think this game has been very well reviewed on Steam. It's well over 90%, I believe, but the big gripe for most people was that maybe they aren't used to it, but I think that a lot of people had negative thoughts about the ARG. So I'm wondering, without explaining, did it do a good enough job in that way where it's like, oh, this is fine if you know what you're doing?
Yeah, I don't know personally where those complaints are coming from.
Okay.
I guess I have done puzzle games and I like this type of game and this sort of like type of thinking, but it is not, for someone with experience in that type of puzzle solving, it is not particularly taxing or difficult or unfair or anything like that.
It made me wonder if people were like, oh, this is free. And then this is like the first type of game of this kind that they've ever jumped into. And they're like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And
I did scroll through a couple of the reviews, and I did see a couple of people saying like, well, when you have to go outside the game, it's a little bit cheating. And I'm like, it kind of feels like the whole premise just shot right over your head in that regard. Like,
right.
like, again, I think that's just a misalignment of their expectations in the type of game, because I feel like it's very upfront about what it is. And I think the execution, if anything, I would say that the execution is maybe a little too easy. Like, This is a puzzle game that I spent about an hour and a half playing through. I had plenty of like very fun, like, oh, cool. Like a lot of like smiles, like you're proud of the developer, right. Like, way to go, you really thought of something fun. But never really any puzzles that were tough. I kind of always knew my next steps, and anytime I got to a puzzle, I sort of always knew how to solve it. In fact, in a couple of instances, one at the very end of the game, I actually leapt like 2 steps ahead because, they wanted me to go. They gave me something they thought I wouldn't understand. They wanted me to go do this other thing to gain context that I could then use to understand the thing I had to solve a puzzle. But I was able to just sort of like deduce with no other information what the thing I had was. And so I never even needed to go do those additional steps. So it actually probably leans a little too easy if I was going to say anything. But that's why I'd say it's a good starter game, because that's me, someone who has legs for this type of like whatever, I don't know, left brain or right brain, whatever side of the brain you use for these puzzles. I've done it many a time, so it's not too unfamiliar to me. So that is the premise. The premise is awesome. I really liked kind of all the setup. Now there's kind of like a rapid fire list of you should be aware ofs for this game. First is well, first off, it looks great. If you're looking at the Steam page, you'll see it's got this nice pixel art, like we were talking about. I think of it as like how you imagine Game Boy Advance games looking from back in the day over what they actually look like, because it's a little more detailed than that, but it has a little GBA aesthetic in my mind. So it looks phenomenal. It's got kind of a nice, tasteful scanline filter and stuff like that. It plays basically one song, and I would say the song is fine.
Right.
it's like it's not offensive. It's not one that I'm going to bring to an OST episode, and you hear it a lot. So at some point you're like, all right, I got you. I heard this song. It's point and click. It's interesting. I'm not really sure why they did this. You navigate the world by clicking where you want to walk to, kind of like Diablo style. But you can't hold the mouse down to walk, so you're always like clicking to the edge of the visible screen, walking like halfway there, then clicking to the edge of the visible screen. You kind of have to like babysit your movement a little bit in a weird way. And since it's kind of like a GBA aesthetic, you're relatively zoomed in and like the pixels are pretty big, so you're doing a lot of little manual clicking. Not that that's that big of a deal, but it's like it felt a little cumbersome sometimes. And then the two things that people are one thing that people will notice, and then one thing that I noticed that maybe others won't, but I'm ruining it for you by pointing it out. The thing that I noticed is that the translation is not great. There's a lot of like grammatical errors and stuff that just sort of jump out. And even when it is even when that is not the case, it feels very sort of literal translation. There's not a lot of embellishment, and the story's relatively like straightforward. So you're more going to be compelled, I think, by the premise and the puzzles than you are the actual events of the game. It's relatively basic in that regard. Okay. Now that said, it's got a great vibe. It's like kind of eerie without being scary. It's tense-ish, but also intriguing. So they straddled the line very well. The other thing that threw me off is, it's a point-and-click adventure game, and so you have a mouse cursor, and when you highlight over one of those usually pink interactable objects that I talked about, it changes to like a finger pointing. So like this is a clickable, interactable thing. But there's a couple screens in the game where there's like a bug where if you like, I think it's like if you hover over certain pixels or if you're moving in a certain direction, the mouse will flicker with that interaction hand and then flicker back to the mouse, which made me think, oh, there's something interactable there. So several times I was like subtly moving the mouse, like trying to find that interactable pixel again that didn't actually exist because it was a bug in the game. And so I lost a little confidence in terms of like, what is interactable here? Like, and because this is the type of game that like is kind of messing with you a little bit, I'm like, am I seeing like a little bit behind the curtain and this is going to become a thing later? Am I supposed to be like curious about why I can interact with this thing that seems like I shouldn't be able to? And so it was very much like, oh no, I'm gonna get it. I can't get it. And so just know when you play, you will know if you need to interact with an object. If you're getting teased by the game, don't think too hard about it. I think that's kind of like all in all of it. I mean, it's my kind of game because I have my notes document here next to me. And then the second half of my notes document is just a big gibberish bunch of notes and alphanumeric codes and, reminders for later and half-solved puzzles and things and, all the type of stuff. I love a good notes game, as you all know. Yep. So, any questions about anything before I sort of round it out?
I mean, not a question necessarily. I suppose the caveat, like what you were saying about the glitchiness and the translation. When you play a game like this that is free, I suppose you understand that there's a potential there for that.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It's not necessarily going to ruin your experience or take you out of it, and I'm not like, I don't want to say I'm not docking points, but it's like, this game isn't being scored. I'm grateful for the opportunity to play the game at all, but I pointed out because it's something that pointed itself out to me, I guess is the best way of saying it. Like, if it's something that I like took note of without trying, I think it's worth mentioning and sharing. So
do you think that
at some point you have to be like, thanks for producing it at all, right?
Right.
Do you think that this concept could be fleshed out further and be made into a grander game with fixes and obviously, right?
I mean, I actually thought on that question for a long time, and I ultimately settled on I don't know. I think so. Like,
Mhm.
I think you could. I don't know what the point of exhaustion for some people would be, specifically under the context of like a time loop with a harsh time limit. Because, again, not really that big of a spoiler. They wouldn't put a time limit in the game if this wasn't the case. But there are certain things that have to happen at certain times. And if you miss them, it's not that big of a deal in this game because, like, you just kind of can reset the loop, and you're never more than, like, a minute of real time getting back there because you can fast forward through the slow bits. But if this was like a longer, larger game, maybe those mistakes would become more frustrating, but there's also more potential for, I don't know, some sort of checkpointing. I'm sure they could solve that. They've done a lot of like intelligent design here that I would trust them to find a solution. So I would like to see it. I don't know if it would work or not. Prove me right or prove me wrong.
I mean, I suppose the way they could go is just to do multiple time loops, right? You complete this part of the game. And then you have, now it's noon to 12:15, and that could be the way that they...
And I think that's the way I would want it to be. Ultimately, I guess where I would land on that question is I think they could flesh it out or do more because I left wanting more. So that tells me that there's more meat on the bone, right? Yep. Whether or not I have concerns about it becoming repetitive, I left thinking like, damn, it's already over? Okay, well... Give me a little more. Let's go.
Right. Yeah.
And I will say it's maybe possible that there is a little bit more that I didn't do. It was kind of unclear to me, and it was also unclear to like Reddit when I Googled it. So it's possible I don't think there's much, but it's possible there's a little game that I did not experience myself.
Right. And it's the thing with time loop games, just like there's a hard, happy medium to find. Because I know like there's games like 12 minutes where people were like, yeah, that was good, but there's a lot of repetition and there's a lot of things dragging that game down. And then there's Outer Wilds, which like I could spend 45 hours in this game or 35 to 40 hours, whatever it was, and still find more things and not even mind redoing the loops because there's just so much in it, So it's kind of like finding the moment to moment to be fun, even though you are still doing repetition, is a hard thing to, hard line to walk, I guess.
Yeah. Very much so. It is. And again, they've done some cool shit here for sure. So like that is the takeaway of anything. You should know like, oh, this game's pretty slick and it's free as hell. So definitely check it out. All right. Well, given that, my closing thoughts on it. One, thank you for the recommendation. I never would have known about this game otherwise. Extremely fun. And again, very much my type of thing. I've been saying since 2019 that I can't believe, given the success of Outer Wilds, that there aren't more Outer Wilds likes. Like there aren't more people like aping that style. Right. Now we've had a lot of time loop games, but I feel like not in this same way. Not in this like time loop meets there's no external mechanics. It's all down to your understanding of the world and deducing how to navigate in this space. So in that regard, I think it is awesome. I do wish that it had more of like a narrative to pull me through. So people that are not as like, I don't know, ARG pilled as me, people that are not as into this type of puzzle game, I don't think are going to be quite as pulled along. But if you are, me or my type of puzzler, you'll have a good time. Ultimately, I'm going to put it on the side quest. I feel like it's got some really high highs and then some other areas that either could use a little more building out or just weren't a priority for the developer. And I think that that's okay. I think it's good to represent a game like this on the side quest as like a really solid outing in this genre. And that was not an easy decision for me. I actually, again, went back and forth on that many, many times. If you ask me next week, I might put the thumb on the scale and move it over to a main quest. I don't know. But for now, side quest is where I'm going to land it. And I'm going to recommend it to people. Say, hey, go check it out. Especially if you like Space for the Unbound, which you guys brought. I haven't played it. So this is my only experience with this developer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it does anything else that's a Space for the Unbound-y. Obviously, I haven't played it yet. Maybe I will get around to it this year. Other than graphical style. But, I mean, it certainly it has some roots there that especially Unbound did with how things look. Yeah.
Yeah, and then Space Within Unbound does the whole, there's a world inside of people's heads that's inside of a real world with puzzles. So maybe kind of like tangentially related there. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe that should have been the game of the year last year. Who knows? But it is what it is.
Well, Steve wouldn't have had a freaking kid, but whatever.
Oh, sorry. You want to go wake him up so you can tell that to his face?
Well, anyway, we've had 3 awesome games today.
Yeah.
Yours was what? WereCleaner, the WereCleaner, which was a side quest. And then we have Holocure Save the Fans, which was a main quest, which I really enjoyed. And then Test, which is a side quest, which I think all 3 of these are on PC only, correct? I don't think they're on any other platforms. Yeah. So, really solid. I think this is a really successful first outing on doing like a free only selection here.
Yeah, I mean,
almost certainly do it again.
Yeah, and based on our bargain episode, we had so many listeners, specifically in our Discord, try out those games. And I'm hopeful that this gets more interaction with them, right? Because there's no barricade, there's no boundary to getting into this stuff. Just download it and see how you like it for 15 minutes. If you like it enough, play it through. So it allows us to kind of communicate back and forth with our feelings. So hopefully that is the case.
Yeah, and
for your game, there's no Werearcade. I just had to throw it out there.
Oh my god.
Okay.
I was gonna say it's also nice, at least for Seth and I, we each brought relatively short games. So people that don't have that much time, here's a couple of really cool games that you can go knock out in an hour or two.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mine ended up being a super long game that you can just chew on for a very long time and kind of doesn't have an ending. So I mean, if you're into that, that's awesome too.
That is not something that I anticipated any of us would bring. Like a girthy free game, like that's really cool to see, and especially a main quest one. So
I do. Okay, I'm just gonna throw this out here. I kind of dabbled with this game a little bit. Steve, it's a free game. It's like 10 hours long. I know it's a commitment, but it's called Slider. Download it, try it out. I'm just going to throw this out here. I actually DM'd Potomax about it. So this is a very much up both of you guys' alley. So check that out. I'm just going to throw that out just for you specifically, or any listener that's listening. It's called Slider. It's a free game on Steam.
I will definitely check it out. Thank you. Also, fun fact, you can't just Google the word slider. You need to be more specific. A slider is a thing that already exists. I got a lot of delicious looking burgers, but
making you hungry over here. All right, I think that's going to do it for our show today. And what we do at the end of the show is we plug ourselves because it feels so good because I like to steal Travis's catchphrases. So this is IndieQuest Pod. You can find us on Twitter, IndieQuest Pod. And you can send emails, indiequestpod@gmail.com, or you can find the quest log at indiequestpod.com. So it's all the same thing. Very easy to find. Type it in. You're probably going to find something related to us. Steve, where can they find you on the interweb?
Twitch and Twitter are the best places. I'm Blinkoom. That's Blink OOM. M like Minnesota. Drachma, where can they find you?
You can find me at Captain Drachma on Twitter and, of course, in the Polymedia Discord. Best place on the internet. And if you want to get into that Discord, head on over to Patreon, search Polymedia, and jump into the first tier and come hang out with us. Josh, where can we find you?
You can find me at Frantic Society. And speaking of Polymedia, we're a part of the awesome Polymedia Network. Go to polymedianetwork.com to find podcasts about nostalgia, movies, video games, books, Goosebumps specifically, and other podcasts. You're going to find something you like. If you enjoy the show, you're going to find something to have a good time with, and usually we'll put a smile on your face. So check that out, polymedianetwork.com. Now, Steve, why don't you give us some nice parting words for the folks out there today?
Yeah, I want to say, first off, people, go check out some free games, all right? There's a lot of good stuff out there and a lot of incredibly talented people for some reason just giving them away. All right, so please do a little digging, a little exploration. I think you'll be pleased. And I'll just send you off with a little word of advice, which is, you know what? Persistence pays off, all right? Keep on pushing on that thing you're working on. Sometimes it seems like your kid isn't going to like grapes, But you just keep giving him grapes and keep giving him grapes, and eventually he's asking for grapes. All right,
Nice.
He's asking for them. All right, take care, everyone.
See ya.